The internet's favorite AI benchmark video says Apple's M5 Max crushed Nvidia's RTX 5090. It skipped the part where that's not really a fair fight. The video everyone's sharing pits Apple's M5 Max against an RTX 5090 and calls it a knockout for Apple. Here's what it leaves out. The M5 Max only ships inside a MacBook Pro, announced March 2026, starting at $3,599 for the 14-inch. It's a laptop chip, not a desktop part, and that matters for everything that follows. It tops out at 128 GB of unified memory and 614 GB per second of bandwidth. Step down to the M5 Pro tier, and you're capped at 64 GB and 307 GB per second instead. So the 128 GB figure everyone quotes only applies to the top laptop chip. The RTX 5090 it's up against is a desktop card, no laptop chassis required. There's also a mobile RTX 5090 sold inside gaming laptops, and it only has 24 GB of VRAM against the desktop card's 32 GB. Plus, it hits about 145 tokens per second on an 8B model, but can't load a 70B at all. Same name, different chip. Apple's own desktop flagship isn't cheap either. Checking Apple.com live on July 24th, 2026, the Mac Studio's M3 Ultra starts at $5,299, not the $3,999 you'll see in older comparisons. Apple hiked prices in June 2026, and now only one memory tier survives, 96 GB. The 256 GB and 512 RGB options are both gone. Now the actual specs. The RTX 5090 launched in January 2025 at $2,000 MSRP. It packs 32 GB of GDDR7, a 5 12-bit bus, and 1,192 GB per second of bandwidth, close to 3 times the M5 Max's 6114. But MSRP is theoretical. By July 2026, street price for a 5090 averaged 38.9% over MSRP. Newegg had cards from $4,999 up to $4,629. And even Nvidia's own Founders Edition, historically the version closest to MSRP, is now $4,999 there. Amazon was listing partner cards near $4,535. Compare that to the M5 Max MacBook Pro at $3,600, and the cheap Nvidia card framing falls apart. There's no Nvidia link either, so anything past 32 GB crosses plain PCIe. Bandwidth is why the 5090 wins every benchmark where the model actually fits inside its memory. It's not close. Here's the twist the benchmark videos skip. Apple's real M4 to M5 jump isn't about generation speed, it's about prompt processing. On QN3.30B, a MOE model, M5 hits TTFT speedups of 3.5 to 4 times over M4. Generation speed only improves 1.2 to 1.3 times, though. The same gap shows up in engine comparisons. MLX hits 130 tokens per second on a MOE model, where llama.cpp through ollama manages just 43. But on short prompts, that gap can flip. On a 650 token prompt, EMLX spent 94% of its time on prefill, and its effective speed, 13 tokens per second, ended up slower than GG UFS 20. The pattern repeats across sizes. Qwen3 Cheers 8B showed 3.62x TTFT with only 1.24x generation, and Qwen3 to 30B MOE showed 3.52x TTFT against 1.25x generation. Same story, every size. Here's the comparison run for real. Pull a MOE model with ollama, then run the same weights through MLX-LM, and time both with a simple wall clock wrapper. Run it on an M4 Max with 128 GB of unified memory, and the numbers match the research. Ollama lands around 43 tokens per second. AMLX hits 130. Nvidia has the same backend problem, by the way. The same QN3 8B model hit 150 1.4 tokens per second on TensorRT LLM's new backend versus just 93.1 on the legacy one. Identical hardware and weights. Here's where the 5090 hits a wall. Llama 3.370B at 4-bit needs about 35 GB. The card only has 32 GB of VRAM. It doesn't fit, full stop. The arXiv Silicon Showdown paper measured 2 ways around that. Quantize aggressively to IQ3xXC, and it fits, running at 46.5 tokens per second. I post one of these daily. Subscribe if local AI is your thing. keep better quality weights at Q4 and offload 25% to system RAM over PCIe instead, and it drops to 2.3 tokens per second. Apple's M5 Max, with its 128 GB of unified memory, doesn't have to choose either way. Hardwarepedia measured it running the same class of model at about 22 tokens per second. No quantization compromise, no PCIe tax. Memory bandwidth doesn't matter if the model doesn't load in the first place. The paper's blunter framing. Offloading part of a model to system RAM can cut throughput by over 90%, exactly what that 46.5 versus 2.3 gap shows. Zoom out across more models, and the pattern holds everywhere. Small models, Nvidia wins big, sometimes by 2 to 3 times. Hardware Corner benchmarked a real M5 Max on QN 3.527B and saw 23.6 tokens per second against the 5090's 49.1. Once a model doesn't fit in 32 GB, Apple's the only one still running, sometimes the only one that can load it at all. Every source in this dossier agrees on that direction. The academic paper, 2 separate benchmark blogs, and a real owner running both machines side by side. None of them flip the result, only the margin changes. Independent estimates put a full RTX 5090 desktop build, case, PSU, motherboard, cooling included, at around $5,000 all in, not just the price of the card. There's a 6th line worth flagging, not a benchmark. The M5 Ultra, rumored for a refreshed Mac Studio around October 2026 with up to 256 GB BIOS, hasn't shipped as of this recording. Everything else above is measured against hardware you can actually buy today. Think of it as a wall, not a race. Below 32 GB body, Nvidia's bandwidth wins every time. Above it, the RTX 5090 can't load the model at all, no matter how fast its memory is. 2 5090 seconds over PCIe only buy you 64 GB combined, still short of what the biggest open models need. DeepSeek R1 671B is the extreme case. It only runs at all on a Mac with enough unified memory at around 15 to 20 tokens per second. No RTX 5090 configuration loads it, full stop. This is the one dynamic worth watching through 2026. Both companies are memory constrained by the same DRAM shortage, just from opposite directions. Cost tells the same story differently. A 3-year comparison at the 128 GB tier estimates $4,550 for the RTX 5090 path against $2,060 for the M5 Max path, mostly because Nvidia needs a whole extra PC. That gap shows up on the power bill too, an estimated $375 to $475 a year running the RTX 5090 system versus $25 to $30 for the M5 Max. Apple's chips deliver up to 23 times more tokens per joule than the 5090, according to the same arXiv paper. On the Nvidia side, the closest thing to matching Apple's unified memory approach is Nvidia's own DGX Spark, 128 GB unified, now 4,999 after a price hike blamed on memory supply constraints. And it's not just LLMs. Stable Diffusion 3.5 large renders in about 18 seconds on the RTX 5090 versus roughly 90 seconds on the M5 Max, a genuine 5x gap in the other direction. Both chips are right, just for different workloads, and that's exactly what the dominates framing hides. Stack 2 RTX 5090 seconds over PCIe to get past 32 GB, and you only scale at about 1.4 times per card, not 2, since consumer 5090 seconds have no NVLink. If it fits in 32 GB and you want raw speed, buy the 1590. If it doesn't fit, or you need battery power, Apple's unified memory is the only real option on the table right now. And if you're training or fine-tuning anything, skip this debate. CUDA has no real Apple competitor there. Same story for image and video generation, where the 5090's raw compute wins outright. Portability's the mirror image. The M5 Max runs all of this on battery inside a laptop, something no RTX 5090 desktop build even attempts. The Dominates headline works because Dominates gets clicks. The real answer is neither chip dominates. They solve different problems at different memory sizes. Every source in this video, benchmarks, prices, the arXiv paper is linked in the description. I'm back tomorrow with another one of these. See you then.